Morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be here with all of you and our distinguished panelists on the CEO Forum. This morning, we're going to discuss how we unlock the demand that is in this area. And as you know from our previous presentations and with the theme of this conference about the importance of Asian demand. And this is the nexus of where that happens. This will be a panel discussion, but we want to make it interactive. We want to keep it interactive. So we would love to hear from you and have some questions. There will be time for that when we open that up to the floor. But as you know, when we look ahead, and as Azam, my dear colleague, has mentioned earlier, when you look ahead and the importance of Asian demand, the rest of the world is coming to terms with that. And as you know, 80% of the growth in the next 10 years is coming from Asia. And when you club Southeast Asia, the Indian subcontinent, that is a huge contributor to the overall demand for LNG. So these are indeed exciting times for all of us. And our very own analysis actually shows that when you club the Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia, the actual demand numbers over the next decade is actually going to double, if not more. So what we will discuss during the panel today is going to be how do we unlock that and accelerate that growth. So, and without further ado, let me now introduce Ibu Yenni. She is no stranger to most of you, to share her views and her vision for unlocking the growth in the next decade. But let me just introduce her formally. Ibu Yenni is a graduate of law from the Parahyangan University. She started her career in PERTAMINA in 1991. And over the course of the years, she has assumed many different roles, spent some time in Osaka, Japan, and was also president director of Dongi Sonoro several years, and then senior vice president of gas and power before assuming directorship of the gas business since 2014. Ibu Yenni, for those of you who don't know, was also the finalist of the Energy Executive of the Year for Asia Pac at the Energy Council. And that has been a testament of the drive and the change of the transformational growth that she's been leading in the PERTAMINA business, in the gas business since 2014. So Ibu Yenni, if you can share your vision for the next decade. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. Very good morning to you all. I think it's a pleasure for me to be here with the other panelists and to share our view, our PERTAMINA's view in the gas industry in Indonesia. If we talk about the gas industry for PERTAMINA, I should say that we cannot forget the history that we started this a long time ago, decades ago. But the role is exactly different from what we are doing today. So we started in the 70s, becoming a LNG exporter. And I think since then, PERTAMINA has faced some transformation, and also today we're still facing some transformation. And I think if we started in the 70s, you may all recall that at that time, the economics of the development of the gas field of the upstream gas project is basically relying on our LNG export. And therefore, at the time, our domestic market can really enjoy the good price of the gas. Now that, most of the gas has to be provided for our domestic market. From PERTAMINA, out of our gas sales, which is around 2,500 mmCFD, mostly 70% are for domestic needs. That shows that there is a big shift for the economics of our projects, especially on the upstream. And that means that the domestic market will have to be able to bear the economics of all the projects in Indonesia. And that's something which is, I think, becoming a lot of a debate these days about how do we see this gas industry Indonesia will develop. We do have a lot of requirement, we do have a lot of demand. The problem is that can it match with what is available right now in Indonesia? I think Indonesia, we are facing a very natural decline of whatever available right now, while some new project, upstream project, has not been able to develop, and maybe it still takes some more time to develop. So I think that's will going to have some consequences. In this case, Indonesia will have to be prepared to become an importing LNG countries. One of the big LNG demand is in Indonesia. The question that we have to ask ourselves right now, and also for Pertamina, but this is something that I cannot answer all, is that when do we have to bring that LNG to Indonesia? At what price do we have to bring that LNG to Indonesia? Can Indonesian market face the LNG market price? I think this is something which is interesting for us to see in the near future. We do believe in Pertamina that we need to bring the LNG to Indonesia. We do think that around 2020 or a little bit, 2020 to 2023 is something which is a must that we have prepared to face this shortage. I believe the increase of the industry, and my colleague here from PLN, with the more demand gas in the future, will play a lot of role in this energy or the LNG gas demand in the future. Another important thing is that our readiness in the infrastructure. Right now, I mean, we have all this transmission and pipeline distribution network, but we have to develop also the virtual pipeline network, because the Indonesia is an archipelago, and there's a lot of area that cannot be served by the pipeline. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the futures. I believe that everybody's here maybe hear about the process that we are facing right now with the PGN, our colleague from the gas distribution company. And I think that will strengthening our position in the futures, because we can serve more of the customers in the futures. I think that's something that we see is very important. At the same time, for Pertamina, it is also important to keep our legacy in the LNG, in the global LNG market. As you may also, if you hear that we have some uncommitted capacity, because we have some contract which already expired. The long-term contract will expire by 2020, and we have not extended those contracts. So I think this is something that we have to work out together with our colleagues here, maybe from PLN, from other companies which are also present here, to ensure that this volume can be used in Indonesia. Otherwise, we may have to find some ways to mitigate some risk for our upstream. So this is, I think, the interesting efforts for Indonesia. I said that for Pertamina, we are like in a sandwich right now. At the same time, we still have the role as an exporter, LNG exporter. But at the same time, we have to start thinking as the buyer, which I believe this is two different set of mind. As a seller, I believe that we do like to sell it as high as possible price, as less flexibility. As a buyer, I want the other way around. I want to get as cheapest gas as possible and the most flexibility I can get. So sometimes I think it's a little bit like sandwich for me to feel like in between the seller and buyers. But I do hope that in the future, I think Pertamina will be a bit more clearer. I think we believe we will be more into the buyer's side in the future. So that's that I can say. Thank you, Vijay.